Good morning and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Chapter Chat event with our brilliant partners of the BABC Texas. I'm delighted to be joined by a brilliant panel today, sharing some really good insights for businesses who are looking to trade with the state of Texas. There's going to be so much information to find out, and I'm really excited about the event. The Greater Birmingham Transatlantic Chamber of Commerce is part of the British American Business Council network, and we're obviously part of our 10 divisions within the Greater Birmingham Chambers of Commerce. So the whole point of our kind of series of events is to really give you some insight and information for businesses looking to trade with the US, and in particular our chapters. So over the next 6 to 12 months, we're going to be going around all of the BABC, different states, and sharing knowledge and talking about the regions, what's going on in Birmingham and what's going on with the BABC network. So I'm delighted that Sarah Durbridge from the BABC Texas is going to co-host with me today. The event is going to last about an hour. We might run over with questions, but if you do have any questions, tips, advice, comments, please do pop them in the chat box below, or use the Q&A box also. And if anyone has any technical difficulties, my colleague Demi is in the background as chamber events, so please do pop any messages over to her if you're experiencing any issues. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first speaker, who is Jonathan Mars. And Jonathan works for the UK's Department of International Trade, based in Houston, and he is the Regional Director for South Central USA. Jonathan, welcome, and over to you.
Thank you, Stephanie. And firstly, just want to start off by saying thank you ever so much for inviting us here today to talk about Texas. And good afternoon to the UK, and good morning to those people who are here in the States. As Stephanie said, my name is John Mars, and I'm originally from Manchester, hence the lack of the Texas accent. And I've been in Houston now for coming up to 8 years. And from our British consulate in Houston, myself and a team of trade and investment officers cover the states of Texas, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Louisiana. And our main focus is to help UK companies that are looking to export to the US, and in particular this region, and also help US companies that are looking for international growth to consider the UK as their destination of choice. And we cover multiple different sectors, and all of our services are free of charge. And so if you are considering the US market, and more importantly, Texas, then we'll explain at the end of this presentation how you can go about getting in touch and getting more information on some of the opportunities that are available here. So let's start with Texas. Everything is bigger in Texas, it sure is. And just to give you some kind of idea of the size, and Demi's going to move over to the next slide that just shows the size of the actual state itself. So it's roughly about the same size as France, which comes as a surprise to a lot of people. And it certainly did to me when I first came here, because I came here in 2013 to set up the US division for a global oil and gas consultancy business. And one of the mistakes that we made was actually looking at the US as one country. And really, you do need to look at it as 50 different miniature countries, if you like, because there's so many different rules and regulations from state to state. However, if we look at Texas, why is it so strategically important to the UK? Well, it's the second largest state in the US in terms of GDP. And if it was its own country, it would actually be the 9th largest economy in the world, ahead of Brazil, Mexico, Australia, Russia, and Spain. So it kind of just gives you a size of the opportunity, an idea of the size of the opportunity here. In 2019, $15 billion worth of bilateral trade moved between Texas and the UK, and that supported over 52,000 UK jobs. Now, for the 16th year in a row, Texas has been ranked as the #1 state for doing business in the US. And the reason being is it has extremely low taxes compared to most states. There's no corporate or personal income tax, and the cost of living is very competitive to other states in the US. And we also have quite a good climate throughout the year, especially if you like it very hot in July and August. Now, as you'll all be aware, population growth and future economic growth go hand in hand. And Texas is voted #1 for GDP growth by far. And it has 4 of the 11 largest cities in the US are actually in Texas. So that's Austin, Dallas, Houston, and San Antonio. And they're also 4 of the top 10 fastest growing metropolitan areas in the US. So you can imagine there's lots of really good opportunities here. And actually, Demi, if you want to go to the next slide, you'll see how this is now affecting some of the leading organizations in the US to actually move their headquarters to Texas. It's actually the #1 destination now for company relocations. And you can see there on the slide just some of the big names that have moved their HQ to Texas. We actually have 49 of the Fortune 500 headquarters are based in Texas. And we're seeing a constant movement to Texas from other states each month. And in fact, just between January and June of this year, of the 44 headquarters that left California, 21 of those relocated to Texas. And if you look at it wider than the Fortune 500 companies, 101 companies have moved from California to Texas, which is more than any other state. So companies are really starting to see the benefits of doing business here. Now, it's typically had, if you ask a lot of people from the UK, and I was guilty of this back in 2013, what you thought of when you thought of Texas, it would have been oil and gas, or people walking around in cowboy hats, or traveling around on the back of a horse. And actually, it couldn't be further from the truth, because Texas is really focusing on rebranding itself now as the clean energy hub of the world. So we're going through that the transition of the energy transition period to actually kind of get that world platform for being clean energy. It's already the largest producer of wind energy in the whole of the US. And actually, there's only 4 other countries that produce more wind than Texas itself. It's second in the nation for installed solar capacity. And that they aim to be #1 by the end of this year. And there's 130% growth planned for next year. Now, if we keep on the clean energy theme, Exxon announced earlier this year that they're going to invest $100 billion to create the world's largest carbon capture utilization storage facility here in Houston. So there's a lot of money being invested in the state to really start to kind of claim that title of clean energy hub of the world. Now, again, it's not just oil and gas. We also have the Greater Houston Partnership, which is the largest chamber here in Houston, who are rebranding Texas as the third coast for life sciences. We have a complex called the Texas Medical Center, which is the world's largest medical center. It has 60 member institutions. It serves over 10 million patients every year, and it has over 106,000 employees. It's that big, it actually has its own skyline. So there's lots of opportunities for healthcare and life science industries here. That sector itself employs over 320,000 workers, making it larger than the actual energy sector itself. And within that demographic, we have over 19,500 biotech specialists in the state alone. So again, if your company is looking to tap into life sciences and healthcare, this is a perfect landing spot for those companies. We have Texas Instruments here, we have Johnson & Johnson, General Electric, Amazon, Dell, Philips, and numerous other large OEMs that are active in health have chosen Texas for their research and development production activities. And there's about 5.3 billion annual research and development expenditure spent in Texas alone. So you can start to get a feel for what Texas is and what it's becoming. We also have a really growing and fast emerging space sector. We've got SpaceX here, we've got Blue Origin, we've got NASA. We also have a space unicorn, which is Axiom Space, and they're actually based in Houston too. And they're currently building the first commercial space center here in Houston. And that's going to be flown up into space in 5 modules and attached to the International Space Station. So there's so much activity and opportunities that are going on. Now, I've mentioned the 4 largest cities, Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, and Austin. But we also have on the border El Paso. Now, El Paso in itself is a huge city, and it's just dwarfed by the other 4 cities that we've got in the state. But if it was a standalone city anywhere else, it would be a significant player. Now, the reason I mention El Paso and the Mexican border is because I really want UK companies to look at Texas, not just as a landing platform into the US, but also to consider cross-border opportunities into Mexico. We now have the USMCA, which is an agreement between the US, Mexico, and Canada, which is being implemented, that opens up a wealth of opportunities in that whole Texas-Mexico region. We're seeing a lot of, and we're forecasting a lot of activity of nearshoring and onshoring, and manufacturers bringing supply chains back to the US. And that particular region is very attractive because of the low cost of living and the incentives that are there for manufacturing companies. So there's a lot of activity happening. Now, if we go back to healthcare and life sciences, the 4 key cities of Austin, Dallas, Houston, and San Antonio, they have some major health tech hubs going on in those cities. So if that's something that your business is interested in tapping into, then there's a huge ecosystem that we can help introduce you to. In the Texas Medical Center, there's a program called the Biobridge Program. And this is a 6-month program that's designed for UK companies to apply to. And it's not easy to get onto the program, but the officers in our offices can actually help you navigate the application process. And if you're successful to be invited onto the Biobridge program, then you're going to get a 6-month introduction into the life sciences and healthcare system here in Texas. And at the end of that program, you're going to have you would have developed a really good network into that ecosystem. And we've already seen 6 companies from the UK that have completed that company, and 4 of them are already housed in the office space that is available for companies that do complete the program. And we're seeing some really good contracts being secured by those businesses. So again, lots of opportunities in that healthcare space, life sciences, energy, clean energy, lots of opportunity in tech. We obviously have Austin on our doorstep. Space sector offers numerous opportunities as well. So there's lots going on here in the state. And if you want to know more, we will give you some details for the local international trade advisor offices in Birmingham. And if you make an appointment with your local advisor, what they will do is they'll help you kind of understand the US market and also where your company may be best positioned to enter that market. And we can supply those details after this presentation. One thing I would mention is the British American Business Council. We have Sarah online, who is the Executive Director for the Texas chapter. Now, we work very closely with BABC, and they're a great organization if you're looking to really kind of plug into the Texas ecosystem, regardless of what sector, because they cover all of the major cities here in the state. And for, you know, a starting price of, I think it's $200 for an individual membership, which goes slightly higher for corporate memberships, you're really getting some good value from your membership because of the virtual events that go on as well. So that's definitely something that I would suggest that you do follow up with Sarah if you're looking at building your network here in the US. So I'll gladly answer any questions at the end of the presentation. There's a lot more to tell. There's a lot more information I can give you, but I'm conscious of time. But please do get in touch through the International Trade Advisors. Please get in touch with Sarah at BABC, and together we will plug you into the ecosystem here in the state. Thank you, Stephanie.
That's brilliant. No, thank you, Jonathan. Some really great information, and obviously so many opportunities for so many sectors. And for those of you that might not know, but here at the Greater Birmingham Chambers, we actually do hold the contract for the DIT for Birmingham and Solihull. So if anyone does, as Jonathan says, have any questions for our international trade advisors, please do get in touch.
Stephanie, can I just add one more thing as well, really important, I forgot to mention. There's also a fund that's available from the UK government called the Internationalisation Fund. Now, your international trade advisor can help you apply for that fund. And what the fund does, it helps companies that are looking to do market research into a particular country, facilitate introductions, networking, and so on. And that fund will match any expense that you put into any of those areas. There's a cap of £9,000 per company. But again, speak to your international trade advisor about applying for that fund, because it is there and it's for exactly this type of purpose.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Okay, so we'll now move from Houston over to Birmingham. So I'd now like to introduce Lloyd Broad, who is Head of European and International Affairs for Birmingham City Council. And obviously Lloyd is based in Birmingham, and you can see him in his estate right now. But over to you, Lloyd, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Steph, and thank you for that introduction to Texas, Jonathan. I would like to say that everything is bigger in Birmingham, and I'm not speaking from my personal estate. Sadly, it's just the municipal building that I work in. But there's a few things, whilst I only have a couple of slides to share with you, and it's certainly not rich in statistics like Jonathan gave us, but I think a few things that will jump out that Jonathan said will be interesting in terms of the comparisons. I think the one thing was something around rebranding, and I think that was critical. Certainly Birmingham has done a bit of that in recent years. Another thing about building networks, and I think that's a critical message I'd like to give today. And another about some of the sectors that Jonathan went through, and there's some real similarities and opportunities here between Birmingham and Texas that we should highlight. But the thing that we started with was the slide that said everything is bigger in Texas. So perhaps I'll start, and we haven't shared slides, so I didn't know what I was going to see, but perhaps what I should have said on this one was that everything's reachable in Birmingham, as opposed to everything's bigger in Texas. So Texas is a huge place. The UK isn't, but that has its strengths. It's still one of the world's largest economies. And the great thing about Birmingham as a city is it is the most connected city in the UK. And all that map shows is that effectively everywhere that you see in that map is within 4 hours driving distance of Birmingham. So effectively doing business in Birmingham, it means it's very easy to do business anywhere in the UK. It's right centrally located in the middle of the country, and very, very well connected, and it'll be even better connected to the capital, London, which I'll explain a little bit later with the arrival of the new high-speed train link into Birmingham. I suppose the first thing I should do is apologise to those from Birmingham on this call, because obviously I'll be saying things that you probably already know. So firstly, apologies for that. But next one, please, Steph. The next thing I wanted to actually give you is a little bit about Birmingham's past. And this is part of the comment about rebranding. Many of these comments that are in sort of on the screen in front of you are things that have been said and written about Birmingham over hundreds of years. People from Birmingham may recognise some of these things, but we were the workshop of the world, the city of 1,000 trades, the pioneers of the Industrial Revolution, and a well-trodden sentence that we do have more miles of canals than Venice. Great for tourism, but probably not as picturesque as Venice. But actually, the canals were the main form of transport in Birmingham hundreds of years ago. So we were a well-connected city back in the 1700s when the Industrial Revolution was just starting to take off. And the reason for putting some of these things there is that we have a real heritage of innovation in our city, starting back to the dates that you see on that slide. And the people that you see in the early days were the founders of the Lunar Society, industrialists, academics, business leaders, deep thinkers, really, that were the forefathers of lots of things that we take for granted today. And there's just a few images on the screen there, such as the steam engine and photocopiers. That was the first copying machine, to batteries that go in cars, smoke detectors, gas lighting. All of those things there have a heritage back into Birmingham, where it was either founded there, built there, or the people that were the discoverers of such things were at university there or working there. So Birmingham has a rich past and a city with innovation. And obviously there's been, since those days, we've been known as the Motor City, I suppose the Detroit of the UK, which is not a great title to have in today's day and age where we're trying to get people out of the car. But the whole point of diversification is just to illustrate that whilst we have a rich heritage and industrial manufacturing past, which we still do have, there's been a huge diversification into the new technologies and the new sectors that Jonathan has talked about already. But we've not lost that sense of innovation. And I'll talk also a little bit about identity. I think people perceive an identity of Texas. I think Jonathan talked about the big hats and oil. Birmingham has an identity, but it has a changing identity as well, and how you blend an identity of an industrial heritage and an innovative heritage, but also being a modern cosmopolitan city that can embrace these new sectors is a critical factor, I think, in how businesses do promote themselves and do business around the world. And I think the building networks thing is a critical one. We can move on, Steph. So that's a little bit about our past, but in terms of our future, I'm not going to give you all the stats, but Birmingham was sort of voted as the most investable city by Europe's top real estate investment experts. And for many, many years consecutively now, Birmingham has been the #1 destination for foreign direct investment outside of London. We're a connected place, we're an investable place, but we don't rest on our laurels. There's been a whole raft of regeneration over the past 30, 40 years in Birmingham, changing the economic base of the city from it being heavily dominated by automotive, manufacturing, industry, into new sectors, which I'll come to in a second. But we're a growing city. We're expecting another 500,000 population by 2031. We're constantly developing prime real estate and offices. There's huge infrastructure projects going on in the city. And if you used to walk around the city of Birmingham right now, you'd see cranes everywhere. It's really a place that's in the midst of huge growth, notwithstanding the sort of the drawback of COVID and the potential challenges of things like Brexit. Birmingham is a city on the front foot moving forward. And I think the main things on this slide, the two key, what I call game changers, are the introduction of high-speed rail. The HS2 train line that will go initially between London and Birmingham will connect the cities even better than they are already. Right now, you can get to London in 1 hour and 20 minutes on a train. HS2 will connect Birmingham to London in 38 minutes. So my point at the very beginning about connectivity is a critical one. And next year we're hosting the Commonwealth Games. Birmingham has an audience of over 1 billion people that will tune into the games. But it's not about 10 days of sport. It's about the legacy that wraps all around that, the business and trading opportunities that we'll be working on. So Birmingham is a place right now that's taken off. It's got growth ambitions, and we're really looking forward. And our business partners, our businesses in Birmingham, we hope will be the beneficiaries of the growth that's going on in the city. Steph. So the next slide, there's only 2 more slides. This, I suppose, is a bit of a repeat, really, of what Jonathan has said. I talked about rebranding and diversification. Birmingham has changed. We've not lost our industrial manufacturing prowess, but instead of being the workshop of the world and making widgets and heavy industry, we're now really specialist in high growth advanced manufacturing and advanced engineering. And our university sector, our business partners are at the cutting edge of new technologies around advanced manufacturing. So it really is a key sector for Birmingham and the West Midlands. And I think it's important to explain in that diversification how that innovative heritage that I talked about is moving the city forward into the new growth sectors of the future, but not losing that innovation, but taking it through new technologies and new ways of working. And the 6 sectors we've got there, they're not the only sectors where we do business, but they are noted as the key growth sectors. And there's clearly a similarity to what Jonathan said with regards to energy and low carbon, digital, life sciences, but then also business professional financial services. We have the 2nd largest BPFS sector outside of London, and we have a huge creative industry sector. And I know we have partners, businesses on the call today that are from this sector, and Birmingham's really proud of its creative industry sector. And some of you may know Peaky Blinders, and Stephen Knight, the founder of Peaky Blinders, is now opening a new film studio in Birmingham, which is great for Birmingham and great for the creative industries and the jobs and spin-offs that will create. So to the last slide from me, which is what's business to business and trade got to do with the City Council? Well, my job as head of European and International Affairs for the City of Birmingham is to sort of encourage and support our political leadership to provide that civic and political support for our international and global ambitions. And that can't be just at a civic level. It's at a business level, an economic level, a cultural level, an academic level, and how we can be the glue and the enabler for that, the words at the bottom, that Team Birmingham approach, providing that political and civic leadership to bring partners together, to coalesce around shared ambition, to support business, trade and investment, to support ongoing research and innovation, to unlock the cultural, educational and diaspora potential we have in our cities, but exploit our international connections. We have 9 formal relationships around the world. The only US formal relationship we have is with Chicago. They're our sister city, but that doesn't mean Birmingham is restricted to only working with its formal relationships. Anyone that wants to do business with Birmingham, we're all ears, and we're really keen to open up economic opportunities and economic agreements with places where there's mutual interest. So we're keen on establishing and brokering new international relationships, bringing partners and stakeholders together with that shared engagement and shared ambition, and help promote a global identity. What makes a good Texan, or what is a good Texan? What makes a good Brummie, and what's a Brummie? And I'm sure there's other people on this call today that will have their own view of Birmingham's identity. I've given a snapshot of our past identity of being that innovative heartbeat of the Industrial Revolution and the city. Perhaps it's now time for us to develop a new globe post-Brexit global identity and get partners around the city to work together. So that's sort of my ambition and the role of the city in this. We'll leave the chamber to do what they do best, and that's support businesses as they do through the ITA network, through BABC and the other support that you have. And we're keen, Jonathan, to do business with you and our DIT colleagues around the globe. But Texas looks like a great opportunity, and we're really keen to work with you.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you, Lloyd. You know, we're a brilliant young city, and we're open for business, and we absolutely want to work with, you know, our global partners. But no, brilliant summary there. So I'm now going to hand over to Sarah Durbridge, who is the Executive Director for BABC Texas. Thanks, Sarah.
Hi, thanks, Steph. Yeah, so I'm not going to speak for long. I just wanted to have the pleasure of introducing you all to the panel member that we've invited from the BABC, and it's Andy Bird. He is the CEO and founder of InnoApps, and very kindly agreed to be on the panel today to share his experiences with you. And I'm going to let him talk to that. He'll do a much better job than I will. But Andy's been a member of the BABC since January. So into moving to Texas, relocating his business, expanding, I should say, to Texas, but also he can answer any questions you have around being a member of the BABC, and Steph will follow on with how you can get in touch with Andy or myself at the end. But over to you, Andy. Thank you for joining us today, and introduce yourself.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you to Jonathan and Lloyd for their introductions of the cities and states. So very interesting backgrounds there. So as Sarah said, my name is Andy Bird, CEO and founder of InnoApps. We are a digital transformation business. We focus on transforming the back office of our corporate customers. Our customers are typically $1 billion plus organizations. We have around about 500 people throughout the world that are working on the digital transformation journey of corporations. We had a strong link with the energy sector. So Houston was an ideal place for us to relocate when we were looking to move to North America. We started out a few years before I moved here 3 years ago with the family, and have lots of experience of what to do and then also what not to do. It's really nice to see so many UK organizations that are there to support UK businesses moving across to America. The opportunities here are huge. Whether you're doing B2B or B2C, I just don't think being in the UK, you can understand the size of the market here. You know, as Jonathan said, just in Texas, but the US is just so vast, and there's so many opportunities for doing business here. But I look forward to take some of the questions later on and share some of my experiences.
Thanks, Andy. Steph, do you want to introduce your panel guests?
Will do, thank you. Joining part of Andy's panel is also David Green and Izzy Pavana. So Dave is one of our Transatlantic Committee members, very supportive, and is also the Director of Operations for a startup creative agency, The Mighty Shed. So Dave and Izzy, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Sure. As Steph said, I'm David Green at The Mighty Shed, and we've been in Birmingham now for about, since 2012. And I've been in England for about 17 years now. But as you can tell from my accent, I'm not from England. Let's go way back to 1982. When I graduated the University of Kansas, I couldn't find a job anywhere else, so I went down to Dallas, and I thought, I can get a job here. Things seem to be happening here. People get things done. And I was able to get a job. And I was able to work in advertising agencies for about 9 years in Dallas. So during that time, I knew nothing about Texas before I moved in. And I got a good chance to know about not only Dallas and Fort Worth and San Antonio and Austin and Houston and all these other little small markets around the state. And like they say, Texas is a whole nother country. Jonathan, you're talking about 50 states are really just 50 countries. Even that one country of Texas has lots of different cultures inside of the state itself. And so what I thought might be interesting is I'm going to catch up with my old pal, Izzy. I met Izzy in the late 90s when we both worked for the Wall Street Journal in London. And Izzy and I kind of took two separate pathways. I kind of bounced around a little bit, but it eventually just stayed in the UK. Izzy did the opposite. She's British and she moved to Texas. And so she has a lot more updated information on Texas than I do. So I thought it'd be a good chance to sort of find out just what happened over the past 40 years in Texas, Izzy.
Exactly. Well, thanks very much indeed. And firstly, I do apologize because I do see that I come up as Izzy Pavana. In fact, my name is Izzy Trinkle. Pavana is the name of a bar that my friends and I used to hang out in Spain. So when we created all of our emails, we all took our first name and the name of the bar, which is fitting because my last name is Drinkle. You know, I Drinkle was on a business card. In fact, when Dave and I first started at the Wall Street Journal, my first overseas trip was to Heineken in Amsterdam. And at the end of my presentation to the assembled marketing team, the CMO said, Izzy, we'd like to offer you a job. And as I stood there in my ill-fitting Miss Selfridge suit, I felt terribly impressed after my first year out of uni. And they said, no, it's not that your presentation was all too terribly good, but we love the idea of having somebody called I Drinkle on one of our business cards. So there you have it. But anyway, so yes, I discovered Texas with a pin in a map after a night of a lot of red wine drinking in London, and found my way 24 hours later to the hill country of Texas in the October of 2001, which I'm sure you can all imagine, a month after one of the world's most devastating events was quite an experience. I fell in love with Texas absolutely immediately. It was standing at the top of a mountain with a horse and looking 360 to see sort of no signs of human intervention. It was just the most wildest of landscapes, but flowers, birds, you know, butterflies, everything. It wasn't just endless flat land with tumbleweed. Texas is remarkably beautiful. I bought a tiny little cabin house in the hill country in 2004, and then divided my time when I then started my own agency in London, which was a media representation agency with my main client being Hearst. So I represented Town & Country, Harper's Bazaar, Esquire, Cosmopolitan, all of their editions ex-UK to the UK luxury and fashion market. So it was 6 weeks in high heels and 2 weeks in cowboy boots for me as I went between the two countries. I then met my dashing 6'7" Texan husband and moved out here, got my green card in 2012, and then actually kind of had several incarnations. I was, you know, sort of like the Madonna of the working world. Every 18 months, I'd change my look from journalist to, I worked with a building crew. I was putting up drywall and putting up bathroom tiling, and all the while keeping a little bit of a hand in sort of marketing, till eventually last year during the pandemic, I landed the position of marketing and business development director for Boundless Collection. We are one of many agencies that is tethered to the corporate headquarters of Boundless Network in Austin. And we specialize in creating and curating VIP gifting, corporate merch, swag, anything, any tangible item that a client wants to sort of represent their brand love to their clients, constituents, community, fans, and beyond. And working here in Texas, it was so interesting listening to Jonathan. Your presentation was extraordinary. And likewise, Lloyd, just to recognize the synergies between, in fact, both our state and the city of Birmingham. This is truly a land of possibility. And I feel that maybe Texas sometimes gets misrepresented back in Europe, to your point with big hats and oil, not wishing to go down any political vein, but I think sometimes the rest of the world can pigeonhole us into something. And in fact, there have been, I believe it's 39 Democrat governors versus only 7 Republican governors. So the big thing about Texas is they don't care for wussies. They want grit, they want determination, and anything is possible, and they want communication. If you want help, hold your hand up, and they rally. This is a state known for people who will rally. They get right behind ambition. They get right behind trying something else. And as Dave and I will go on to discuss, it really is a state where of levelers. Wouldn't you agree, Dave?
Yeah, that's a good point. We were talking about that this weekend. There's all this leveling up talk in the UK about London and the rest of the country, but it sort of exists already in Texas. Texas has the opportunity to, you never know who you're going to meet. You could be, you know, part of a biker gang, and the guy you're talking to is the CEO of a company, and another guy makes bikes, and you just never know. And it's such a democratically kind of connected city of a 29,000 people, 29 million people, I think, something like that. It does create a kind of leveling environment. But we're also saying too, in a different kind of way, where it is a kind of formalness about it in Texas on presentation. And Izzy, weren't you saying something about it was very noticeable on Zoom calls? As we started doing more Zooms, it got to be like, people really do go out of their way to make sure they look really good on Zoom. It's almost like it's like the salons didn't miss, you know, many customers. They were taken care of.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think I say this only because, you know, people are always commenting about British teeth. I'm sorry, but they are out here. The Brits, we're always getting it for our teeth. And Americans are, they're very well groomed. They put themselves together. That is not as a to try and sort of jostle with sort of, you know, one another. It's just that they do take care of appearance. And I've certainly noticed sort of on Zoom calls here in the US and then Zoom sort of perhaps sort of elsewhere, you know, people create a very nice setting, very nice background. People are very polished. Who knows what's going on from the belly button down, but certainly from, you know, things upwards, everybody is sort of well put together. But to that end, it's been very interesting sort of during, you know, the pandemic to suddenly find ourselves cabin bound because, you know, here in Texas, as I'm sure Jonathan and Andy and Sarah would agree, you know, they're very comfortable driving 2 hours to go out for dinner, you know, whereas, you know, we practically take our passports, you know, if we're going to be venturing from London up to Yorkshire to go and see a family member or something like that. So the reason why I sort of highlight that is they're very comfortable with this interactive forum of Zooms and all the rest of it. They took to that like a duck to water, but at the same time, people are now re-engaging. People are now getting together person to person. And it's not so much that your client is expecting you to knock on the door and come in to present. It's more a case of if you don't, your competitor will be. People are out. People are now back and engaging, and they are whatever, again, however the press may want to misrepresent it. People are practicing sort of safety measures, wearing masks or conducting businesses in forums that are open air or wherever it may be. But if you're not going out and engaging, somebody else is. So, yeah. Yeah,
I was going to say the business environment seems to be very, very much like it's well put together and buttoned up in Texas.
Just on that, Dave, and we're going to, I'm conscious of time, but we'll kind of come back to that in a second, but we're going to kick off some questions kind of relating to that really, but I guess this is very much aimed at, you know, Jonathan, Andy and Izzy, and maybe Andy, you want to kind of go first, but kind of talk us through your biggest challenges, you know, both business and personal, if you are happy to share, you know, in the relocation and why you decided Texas in the first place.
I think personally it was a really easy transition. As everybody sort of said before, people here are so friendly and so welcoming, and there's much more of a family lifestyle here. In the UK, when we used to go out, we would go out in the evening, we'd get babysitters and you would have people look after children and things. In Texas, you all go out together for the day. The weather's a lot better. You know, you'll go to somebody's yard who's got a pool or whatever, and life is just more enjoyable. On the business side, it's a little more challenging, I found. Culturally, things are very different, especially in sales and recruitment and hiring people. The hire at will and the 2 weeks notice period really takes getting used to compared to in the UK, where it's 1 to 3 months and somebody resigns and you've got time to think about it. Somebody, you know, oh, I'm leaving, I'm going on Friday. You know, it's very different to get your head round. But also on the selling side, some of the words that are used have very, very different meaning, I've found, and on delivery of services. So if a customer says to you, that's good, that means that's really not very good. That's pretty poor, actually. And actually, watch out. You've either lost the bit of work you're going for, or you're going to get kicked out of the job that you're in. It's got to be awesome or fantastic. And actually just learning some of those kind of things. You know, it's very common if you're going to a sales meeting to turn up with coffee and cookies and just silly little things like that. Took a little bit of getting used to. But I think what I'm seeing here and what we're coming across is there are lots of people out there to help you with that transition, that are there to help and give advice. And if I was doing it again, I would have looked for those organizations, whereas I wasn't even aware that they were there at the time.
Well, yeah, really interesting. I guess, yeah, Jonathan, do you want to kind of add your experience onto that?
Yeah, I think Andy summed it up really well. I guess, you know, my advice would be research. You can't do enough research before coming out to the market. I made the mistake 8 years ago. I came over to set up the US division for a global oil and gas consultancy firm. 6 months earlier, we'd kind of set up in Australia. We thought we could take the model and kind of and put it into the US. And one of the first things, the hurdles we came across was the company had global insurance. Global insurance excluded the US market. And so just that one point that we'd overlooked set us back about 6 to 8 months in our launch. So research is really important. Don't assume anything. Really consider where you're going to have employees across the states, because each state is different. The workers' compensation policies, rules, regulations are different from state to state. Be prepared for culture shock. People don't consider this. They come to the US thinking, well, you know, everyone speaks English and so on, but it's the little differences that will make the biggest impact on you settling into the country. You know, be prepared to talk a lot slower when you first come to Texas, because in some areas, you know, they'll not quite get what you say first time round, and that can be a bit of a learning curve for people. Terminology is, as Andy alluded to, you know, start to adapt to the US terminology if you want to build rapport. And one of the key things I would suggest is Texans are really welcoming. They really are. I mean, talk about Southern hospitality. It's in volumes here. However, you only really get one shot when you go into a meeting here, and you've got to be going in not just with an ask. It's about what you can do for them as well. And that's a really important point to consider is what are you bringing to the table that's going to benefit that other person, because that's what you should be really leading off on. And yeah, just, you know, like I say, it's a great place to be. It's a great place to live. The cost of living is fantastic. The climate's great. And it is a very, very welcoming community. So yeah, that would be my advice.
Research. Brilliant. Izzy, Dave, do you want to add anything onto this?
Food? Should we talk about food?
We all love food.
And you will not go hungry in Texas.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I
think we're talking about the CIA.
Oh, yes. Yeah, here in San Antonio, if I may, I mean, I think Jonathan and Andy put it all in a perfect nutshell. Absolutely. I echo everything that they've expressed. One of the things I think I found interesting, simply because I covered it as a story, was sort of the rise of the food scene here in San Antonio in particular. And this kind of came about, a friend of mine he made a small documentary about the rise of the cocktail culture here in San Antonio. And so pre-2008, it was pretty much, you know, Tex-Mex, Pearl beer, you know, chicken fried steak, and that was it. But after October of 2008 and the crash, and people left other bigger cities, New York, Chicago, Detroit, wherever it was, and had to kind of come lick their wounds and reinvent themselves, and I dare say sort of take a hit on salaries. As they got to places like San Antonio, they came with their expertise, they came with their ambition, they came with their will to recover, but they also came with their taste to want, you know, dirty martinis and baked oysters. And it was remarkable to watch this incredible trajectory of culinary talent here in San Antonio, largely because we have 3 CIAs here, Culinary Institutes of America. One is based in LA, one is in New York, and the third one is in San Antonio. And so suddenly there was this raft of extraordinary chefs coming out and kind of opening shop here in San Antonio. And I think that sort of position San Antonio as an Epicurean destination, but as well, it enabled us not to be seen as just the redheaded stepkid of Texas or at the end of the Austin corridor. It was like, this is San Antonio, you know, we have Fiesta in April for 10 days, you know, all sorts of things. And the city just became just really, really proud, you know, of its new identity and kind of, you know, sort of going head to head with other great Epicurean destinations.
Worth mentioning as well about San Antonio's cybersecurity sector, which is, you know, second largest in the US. So, you know, again, if your business is looking at breaking into that ecosystem, then again, you've got fantastic opportunities over in San Antonio.
Yeah, that's true. With the likes of Rackspace, Jonathan, I'm sure you're alluding to that. And that's been really nice for me because, in fact, I've sort of made friends with people who are rackers, who are, you know, Brits. So, you know, there's Marmite sandwiches and cups of tea around my house on occasion for all of them.
So from food, I guess we could kind of move on to travel, you know, which I'm sure we all love to travel. And, you know, judging from the news that's happened in the last couple of days, hopefully towards the end of the year, you know, things will be in some kind of normal way. So I guess, yeah, maybe one for you, Andy, to start with, but, you know, how has the pandemic affected, you know, your business with the travel ban? You know, has it impacted your business, and how have you overcome those challenges?
So like everybody else, I think we've pivoted to Teams and Zoom and all of these kind of different technologies to do that. But I don't think you can beat getting on a plane and meeting with people. Transatlantic travel for me, being on a visa, has been impossible. And as you said, hopefully comes back in the next few weeks. But internal travel in the US, apart from really early on in the pandemic, didn't slow down too much. It was a lot quieter, but I still travel to see clients. As Izzy said, if you're not doing it, somebody else will be. You know, last week I was in New York, next week I'm in Boston. We're continuing to travel within the US, not as much, but it didn't stop. But it's also been a lot safer than what I think is being portrayed in the press, because I don't know anybody that's caught COVID by traveling. I do think that the hotels are profiteering on not cleaning your room anymore and no room service and putting the prices up. But I'm sure that's the world over. That's not a US thing. But getting back to normal, I think, and we're going to live with this virus forever. So the sooner everyone just cracks on with their life, the better, I think.
Yep.
Beth, if I could just make a comment on the issue of travel. I think we've all adapted in the last 18 months or so to being more digitally enabled and using Zoom and Teams and all those other platforms to meet, greet, do business, talk. And it's been difficult. And I won't lie, I mean, I've spent many years working for Birmingham, traveling everywhere, meeting people, building relationships, making contacts, doing business, different types of business to many of the things that you guys do, but doing different types of business. And there's no substitute, in my opinion, for face-to-face relationships, building trust, building confidence in each other, and generally getting people to like you and wanting to do business with you. It's absolutely invaluable, in my opinion. And I think what you've said about Texas being a welcoming place, that goes a long way. If you go somewhere and you're looked after, you're treated well, and they give you some good food, then it makes business a lot easier. I do business with a lot of European cities. And when you're hosting city mayors from Barcelona or from Paris or from Lyon or from Naples or and you give them bad food, the relationship's done, it's over. You know, so there's an issue of trust, building respect, looking after people, getting people to like you, like your city, like your ambition. And it's really difficult to build that through a laptop and through a computer screen. So the sooner we get back to being able to travel better, then all the better for developing stronger economic and business relationships, in my opinion. I think Zoom and electronic has been good in a way in which it's given us another alternative to always have to jump on a plane every 5 minutes to go and talk to somebody. So I've changed my behaviors for sure, but it's certainly no substitute for doing business, getting to meet people and build that trust and build those relationships.
I would just like to add to that, because Lloyd, you make such a salient point, and it kind of marries with what Andy was explaining about, coming together around a swimming pool, with friends and families. I think this is where really Texans really, really do shine, is that, I've been on business calls, on Zoom calls, and, there's a 4-year-old running crayon along the back of the wall and a mother having to sort of go on mute, and, we can all read lips as to what's being said, kind of thing. But Texans find that incredibly normal. That's not going to, they won't be, oh gosh, why did that child come running in? They will love that. And they would rather you grabbed your child and pulled them onto your lap and carried on the meeting. And so to your point, those things have been normalized, but, Texans shine by being incredibly human. They have incredibly high standards. They want people to really deliver. I enjoy doing business with them because they don't ghost, which, I think we have all experienced ourselves, just never getting a response on something, particularly when you've poured so much time into a presentation or a quote, or whatever it may be. But again, to your point, the one-on-one, the in-person meeting, is king.
There has been a question raised. Can't build relationships digitally. Is that a view shared by everybody? And I think that's a really good question, because we can sound like dinosaurs in that there's only one way to do business, and that's to have a few beers, a glass of wine, sit around the table, eat a good meal, and then the deal's done. Of course you can do business digitally, but the point about trust and about building relationships, I think it's a really tough ask to do that digitally alone. And I think that human contact is a vital ingredient of relationships, in my opinion.
I would agree. We've had to do that. I mean, we've had customers and clients now that we have never physically met, and we've taken them on a digital transformation journey, which I would have said was impossible before the pandemic. That how do you get that level of trust, completely change the way somebody operates their business? But we have done it, and our teams have done a fantastic job of doing it, and it will change the way that we work. I'm not sure we will ever fully open our offices again, but I think you do need to have spaces come together for innovation, collaboration, and fun, right? It's much more fun being together, and we spend so much time at work and so much energy at work that if it's not fun and enjoyable, your staff are going to go somewhere else. So, and it's the same with the customers and the clients. But yes, absolutely you can do it digitally. And we all are doing it digitally, but I don't think you can beat in-person time together either.
I think just to add to that, I think we'll be left with more of a hybrid approach, because like you say, Andy, you can't beat face-to-face interaction with people, but also the convenience of being able to be in one country at 10 o'clock and in another country at 11:30 because you're doing things virtually. It's just fantastic. It really is. And I think it's just all down to your approach to it all. But I think we'll be kind of left with that hybrid approach as we move forward. But just back to the travel and traveling actually within the state of Texas. One thing you've got to consider is most people drive everywhere because the public infrastructure, the public transport infrastructure isn't like the UK for a number of reasons. One, just because of the heat in the, during the summer, a lot of people will drive everywhere, and we haven't got the train system and the rail system, the bus system in most of the cities. Austin's probably more pedestrianized than most, with San Antonio as well. But in Houston, you will drive everywhere because we're so spread out. So again, that's something that you've got to factor in when you're doing your research and considering which cities are best suited for your kind of business model.
Mm-hmm. And just to go back to that point about building relationships digitally, what are the potentials?
Okay, I'm just going to jump in there. Thank you, John. Yeah, really interesting conversations. We had a question that's come in on the chat around, well, actually, before I move to that question, I just wanted to add in from a British Business Council perspective, the hybrid approach is definitely the way we'll be going forward. I think we've realised the real benefits of being able to bring in members from, the UK that, maybe wouldn't even have looked at joining us as members beforehand. And, we're running an event later in the month and another one in October with a member in the UK. And that wouldn't have happened, I don't think pre-pandemic, because we weren't so in tune with these virtual events. And, we've had members joining from Wales. They've never met us. They've never met any other of our members in the US. And, it's invaluable for them to be able to get airtime in front of a brand new audience. So absolutely echo what you say. I think the hybrid approach is the way forward. But yeah, I love a face-to-face as much as the next person. But from a business standpoint, I don't think virtual's going anywhere for a while, and maybe not at all. So yeah, I just wanted to touch on a question that came in the chat from Jeff, and I do realise we're a little bit over the hour, so if you could bear with us, everyone. So Jeff says that he operates a logistics audit company in Birmingham. He has overseas presence in Asia, Europe, and a small location in Dallas, and he's asking how to best advertise services in Texas in the business community, trade journals, chambers, etc. So my first response is to put a plug in there for BABC. We have members. I think we have at the moment about 130 members across the UK and Texas, but we have over 1,000 subscribers on our newsletter. You join us as a member, we can put out a member spotlight, we can promote your events, we can promote anything that your company's doing. And maybe this is a good segue for you to come in, Andy, and just share your experiences. I mean, there are many other organisations, the DIT can help, other chambers here. Andy, what are your thoughts and experiences? BABC, any other organisations that can help Jeff out?
So we met virtually, or I met your organisation completely virtually. I don't think I've met anyone in person yet and became a member. And I've met quite a lot of members virtually, and some that we're going to do business with. So it is a good source of contacts. Most of our business gets generated through the same channels as what you would in the UK: digital marketing, social selling. And then feet on the ground. So a combination of those things. I find, I don't know that I would necessarily go and do paid advertising in journals, but it's not the kind of place people would come to us for business for. I would look more to do targeted marketing and social selling. And I'm sure, based on what David pitched his business on, is he would absolutely agree on that.
I was going to say that's pretty specific, to be in Texas and being in the logistics business, man, that's pretty specific. You could probably come up with a market like that's probably Houston. If I wouldn't doubt if most of it's Houston. So I would start picking out some digital opportunities, in that market.
And they are building logistics centers here that, are just of a different size and scale to anything you would see in the UK. They look more like a city than some of the ones that are being built along the road from us. Yeah. I would say it's a huge area to go after.
I would just say along the border, they can't build distribution centres quick enough. They really can't, because of the amount of traffic that's coming through. But again, I would just kind of anchor back to research, really understand where your audience is that you're trying to target, which is the best channel to engage with that audience, and work with companies that specialize in those kind of mediums, so you can really make sure that any money you are spending, you're getting the best return on investment.
Yeah, and I would just also throw I dare say, a bit of a shameless plug on my part, only just because of experience with certain clients who've gone through exactly what you've been, the question that you're raising. And that is, again, to Jonathan's point, engagement. So we've created, a lot of sort of gift opportunities whereby a client has sent out, for instance, a pedometer, and a piece of drinkware and something along those lines, and set challenges, try and walk to the top of the Eiffel Tower or to Big Ben or the Leaning Tower of Pisa. And then as people come together, they've been engaged by this sort of challenge to do and spoken about their experience of it, so that there has been some kind of springboard, something fun. And Texans really love to do fun. They don't have, I dare say, maybe I just had difficult people back in the UK, but from my experience of Brits, that kind of thing can be met with a bit of a hang up. Oh, I don't want to be doing that. Oh no, I'm not really into that kind of thing. Texans really enjoy that. So for us, it's been sort of creating those kinds of marketing campaigns to get people engaged with some kind of product, some kind of effort. And then as people come together, whether it's the infinite number of sort of Zoom calls for sales, global meetings over a digital platform where people have been given a task to make a pancake that morning and, bring it to the screen and show their efforts. It's fun, it's easing, it's an icebreaker, and everybody loves receiving a treat. So with some branding on it, let's go branding.
All right, thank you guys. So I think we answered the questions that came in on the chat, but after this, you're probably going to have several more. We could probably wax lyrical about Texas for quite a few more hours here. But in the interest of time, we are now going to close the event out. So all that's really left for me to say is to thank everyone for attending our panel. It's been great. I always learn something when I come to these sessions, and I've been in Texas for a long time, but it's great to hear people speaking so enthusiastically about the place that I now call home, and for it being such a great place to do business. So Steph, thank you for offering us this opportunity to showcase Texas. Loved hearing about what Birmingham has to offer. David, Izzy, Andy, thank you. John, and to you too. Thanks for joining us today. So at the top, we mentioned ways to get in touch. Steph and her team will be sending out a follow-on email. In that email, there'll be the slides from today and lots of information about how you can get in touch with each of us, how to get in touch with your international trade advisor. And then if you've got any other questions about being a member of BABC, then please do go to our website and sign up. We're always happy to bring more members on board. Anything else, Steph, from you?
No, just to reiterate, to say thank you so much to a great panel. Yeah, thank you, and have a great day and a great evening.
All right, guys, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.